Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Peck.
Here.
Commissioner Angel.
Here.
Commissioner Arpke.
Here.
Commissioner Jennings.
Here.
Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time I'd like to open it up to the citizens' open forum. If there's anyone from the community who would like to stand up and comment on anything that is not on today's agenda, we'd welcome those comments. If you could state your name and address.
Yeah, my name's John Miller, and it's 505 Moon Drive. What I'm up here for is, I'll give you a little bit of history. My family's been in business since 1947 in Salina, okay? And my problem with the city and the and the way that things is run, when they built that overpass over there in East Salina, they took out my property, and I was fighting them guys, and I had prostate cancer in 2003, got that taken care of, and in 2004 I had cancer of kidney and bladder and went to Kansas City down there for 60 days, and I come back home, and first thing I had to do was fight the city on my property problem. And on top of that, you know, all I've been doing has been harassed by the city police department. The sheriff department confiscated my fireworks last year. They had no business doing it. And you got a district court judge that, you know, I got a speeding ticket, and I had to video the police officer that he didn't run the stop sign, but yet I was found guilty, so I had to fill the cases. And the same thing over in the municipal court. You have a lot of problems over there too. It's all, don't do as I do, but do as I say, you know. You guys got a lot of corruption in Salina, and I'm also here today to tell you that you don't need to throw no more money over the bicentennial center deal. Okay? That money could be better spent, used of helping rehabilitate houses down at the north end, or some folks that's on limited income in Salina. Because all, you know, and get rid of the neighborhood services. It's nothing but alignment like a socialist China neighbor calling in on neighboring things. That's all it amounts to. Okay? You need to get rid of that thing. Put those people to work doing something else. Because if you got one guy mad at another guy, they turn you in. I've had it done to me before. You know, I ain't got time for around that stuff, you know. If they want me to do something, if they come and ask me nicely, I'll do it, you know. They come on my property, and if you're going to talk about letting the people write citations like the animal shelter, I'm going to tell you a story here. About a month ago, the lady come on my property. I have no trespassing signs on there. The lady across the street seen her do it. So I said, and she put a note on my door. She don't even know how to spell. I don't think she's got an education. I don't know what kind of people you are, but she don't have spelling with crap. But so she come my place the next day, and I told her, don't come on my property. She said, why? I said, you know, if you would have called me and asked me nicely, I would have walked you on there, but you didn't do it. You know, I had no trespassing signs, and I should have had you arrested. All right, and then it just led one thing to another. Then she called a police officer, come out, and he come on my property, was on property, and he says, I'm going to arrest you. And I said, you better call your watch commander before you arrest me, because I ain't did nothing wrong. Okay, it was a big battle. So she told the officer that she was in the street taking pictures. So my neighbor come across the street. When she got home from school, she runs a school bus. And I brought over and I said, now I want you to tell this officer exactly where you seen her taking pictures. She said, clear up there in your yard, way back in there, okay? And so so I go to court over the municipal court. You know, I try to tell them. I said, look, I got plenty of water and stuff there, but they don't. I don't have a chance in this court system. Okay, I really don't, and I'm getting tired of harassment. It's been going on since 2004. It needs to stop. You got a lot of corruption in these officers and stuff in Salina. And one time they arrested me for driving on a suspended license. They didn't know my license was suspended. The district court judge suspended. Didn't even send me a letter telling me doing it. I've been down to county jail 3 times this year for crap, plumb crap. So then I go ask for my license back at the police station, and the lady works as secretary. She's real nice, and they have an officer on duty, a desk officer. And I asked her, I said, I need to see if I can get my license back. So she said, you need to talk to the officer there, which I did. And he wanted to argue with me, and I said, look, I don't want to argue with you. I want to talk to your supervisor. He's not here. I said, well, you need to call Chief Hill because I need to get my driver's license back. Nope, can't do that. Some stupid stuff, So I left, and he acted like he's going to come out around and arrest me because I asked him for that, okay? But he did not call Chief Hill. He did not call a supervisor, nobody that day. Your police department got better things doing in this town. I don't know, you got guys raping 90-year-old women in the hospital. You got drug dealers shooting each other in the street. You got murders in this town, some they didn't even solve. They got better things doing to harass John Miller, okay? I just now get my business back, okay? And I'd appreciate it if these people would back off a little bit. And as far as spending money on the Bicentennial Center, you're wrong, dead wrong over there, because that's a white elephant. We're still paying $500,000 a year to support that thing. You could better spend the money on something else, okay? That's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you for your willingness to speak your mind. Is there anyone else from the public today that would like to make any comments during this Citizens Open Forum? Seeing none, we will move on to awards and proclamations.
The week of May 8th through the 16th, 2010, as National Travel and Tourism Week in the city of Salina. Sylvia Rice with the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce will read the proclamation.
Ms. Rice.
Good afternoon, Mayor Peck, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Whereas travel to and within the United States provides significant economic benefits for the nation, including direct expenditures by domestic and international travelers totaling $704 billion. Whereas the travel industry ranks as the 5th largest employer in the United States and among the top 10 industries in 48 states and the District of Columbia when measured by employment. Whereas the Kansas Department of Commerce Travel and Tourism Division reports that in 2006, the total impact of travel and tourism in Kansas exceeded $5.4 billion. More than 128,000 jobs were created by travel and tourism activity, comprising 9.5% of total employment in the state, ranking tourism as the 3rd largest private sector employer in Kansas. Travel and tourism in Kansas generated $1.7 billion in federal, state, and local taxes. Travel and tourism activity generated more than $700 million in north central Kansas, including an estimated $200 million in the Saline County area. Whereas the Visit Salina division of the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce reports that in 2009, $20 million in room revenue was generated at Salina lodging facilities, creating a minimum of $51 million in visitor spending. Travel and tourism generates 2,200 to 2,500 jobs at lodging facilities, attractions, event venues, restaurants, retail shops, and tourism service businesses in the Salina area. More than 7,800 inquiries were generated from potential visitors through travel print ad placements. Whereas travel contributes to personal growth, health, professional advancement, education, cultural understanding, and the enhancement of America's image around the world. And whereas the U.S. Congress passed and the President signed into law the Travel Promotion Act, creating a new nationally coordinated communications and promotions program to attract millions of new international visitors and create thousands of new U.S. jobs. The Travel Promotion Act helped reverse a decade of decline in overseas travel to the U.S. that could have contributed 68 million more arrivals, $509 billion in total spending, and 441,000 jobs had the United States kept pace with global trends over the past decade. Whereas meetings, events, and incentive travel are core business functions that help companies strengthen business performance, align and educate employees and customers, and reward business accomplishments. And whereas travel can serve as a catalyst to move the national, state, and local economy forward. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Aaron Peck, do hereby proclaim May 8th through the 16th, 2010, as National Travel and Tourism Week in Salina, Kansas.
Thank you. Do you have any special events or activities planned for this week or for the week?
We do have activities planned throughout the week. As we speak, we have secret shoppers out in the community, stopping by retail shops, restaurants, hotels, and attractions, checking to see just how in tune our frontline employees are to what there is going on in Salina and what our visitors can enjoy. On Wednesday, we'll be celebrating an open house at our office across the street, the Visit Salina office behind the chamber. You're all invited to attend that. We've invited all of the frontline employees from the hospitality industry, from hotels, restaurants, convenience stores. Many of them are represented here. Y'all want to wave? Hello. They'll be coming in on Wednesday, particularly to sign up to get tickets for a great event. We're very proud to be hosting the first corporate function at Kenwood Cove on Sunday, June the 6th, especially for our frontline employees. This is a way for us to thank them for the terrific job that they do representing all of the community to our visitors, and also to introduce them to one of our newest assets that they can be promoting at the front desk, at tableside, and so forth. So that will be happening throughout the week as well. We do have 4 commissioners. Tiffany Benin and Joanne McClure from our office are both modeling and giving to you our summer slide t-shirts. This is our summer slide promotion this year. You can check with us if you have color or size preferences that are different than those that are in your bag. But it's our week to tell our employees thanks and to give them an opportunity to learn more about the community.
What size did you choose for me?
We chose the longest one we had, Mayor.
I have a signed copy of your proclamation here, and thank you all for coming.
You got a petite.
The week of May 9th through the 15th, 2010 as Police Week, and the day of May 15th, 2010 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in the city of Salina. Lieutenant Sean Morton with the Salina Police Department will read the proclamation.
Lieutenant Morton.
Thank you. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas law enforcement officers play an important role in safeguarding the rights, freedoms, safety, and security of the citizens of our community. And whereas the city of Salina desires to honor the valor, dedication, service, and sacrifice of its own police officers, 4 of whom have been killed in the line of duty. And whereas 125 officers were killed in the line of duty in 2009 and some 60,000 were assaulted, our community joins with other cities and towns to honor all peace officers everywhere. And I, Aaron G. Peck, Mayor of the City of Salina, do hereby proclaim the week of May 9th to May 15th, 2010 to be Police Week, and call upon all our citizens in this community to especially honor and show our sincere appreciation for the police officers of this city by deed, remark, and attitude. I call upon all our citizens to make every effort to express their thanks to officers who make it possible for us to leave our homes and families in safety each day and return to our homes knowing they are protected by officers willing to sacrifice their lives if necessary to guard our loved ones, property, and government against all who would violate the law.
Very good. What activities do you have planned?
Well, we have the annual Law Enforcement Memorial Service, which will be on the 14th, Friday the 14th at 8 o'clock, Jerry Ivy Park.
Very good. Thank you very much. I have a signed copy of this proclamation.
The week of May 16th through the 22nd, 2010 as Emergency Medical Services Week in the city of Salina. Scott McCready with the Salina Fire Department will read the proclamation.
Mr. McCready.
Good afternoon. EMS Week Proclamation. to designate the week of May 16th through the 22nd, 2010 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of the emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas the emergency medical services system consists of emergency physicians, emergency nurses, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, educators, administrators, and others. And whereas the members of the emergency medical services team, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, I, Aaron Peck, City of Salina, Mayor, Kansas recognition of this event, hereby proclaim the week of May 16th to the 22nd, 2010 as Emergency Medical Services Week. With the theme, EMS Anytime, Anywhere, we'll be there, I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities.
Speaking of which, can you tell us of any activities or events that you have going on this week?
Yeah, on the May 18th, we're going to recognize some rural fire departments and some of their personnel. A lot of people don't realize it, but they volunteer. They respond on emergency medical services. We'll go out there with an ambulance. They'll already be there. They'll have a few things started for us, and some of them do an outstanding job. They all do a good job. Some do an outstanding job, and we're going to recognize some of those. And, of course, as always, our doors are always open at the fire department for the community. Come by, visit, and need a blood pressure check or anything like that, stop by and say hi.
Very good. I have a signed copy of this proclamation.
No cake?
There are no public hearings or items scheduled for a certain time, so we will move on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of May 3rd, 2010.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to development business.
Item 7.1, application number PDD 10-1, requesting a change in zoning district classification from R-1 to PDD R-3 to allow construction on a new 5-plex apartment building on property addressed as 662 to 664 South 9th Street. 7.1A, first reading, ordinance number 10-10546.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This property that we're discussing is located on the west side of South 9th Street, just north of Crawford, and it's directly north of Backover Plumbing, next to an existing C5 district. And this property has an existing dwelling on it. It's been zoned R1 since 1977, and that's consistent with the surrounding zoning of property in the residential areas to the north and west. And the owner, Dennis Collier, has acquired this property. He actually acquired it in the 1990s, has been using it as a rental property, and he approached city staff with the concept of tearing it down and building back a 5-plex apartment building in its place based on its historic use as a multi-unit property. This property is unique in the standpoint that it's 50 feet wide and 200 feet deep. And so the proposed new construction was 30 feet wide and 100 feet deep to fit on that lot. So we indicated to Mr. Collier that his first step would be to see if the property could be rezoned from R1 single family to R3 multifamily. And on February 16th, the Planning Commission looked at that proposal, and they saw a proposal for a 2-story apartment building that was 30 by 100 feet, had individual entrances along the south side, had a 12-foot setback on the south and 8 feet on the north, and was going to be set 30 feet from 9th Street. And most of the parking was at the rear adjacent to the alley. The Planning Commission reviewed that, heard from neighboring property owners, and voted to direct the applicant to amend the application to a planned development district, which is essentially what you see is what you get zoning, so that any approval would be subject to a specific plan. They also asked the applicant to look at some revisions to his plan, which he made by shifting the building 41 feet to the west, making the primary parking in front along Ninth Street and reducing the parking at the rear alley. They also asked for an elevation drawing showing what the building would look like from Ninth Street. So we now have a building that's 71 feet from Ninth Street instead of 30 feet, has most of the parking in front, maintains the 12 and 8-foot setbacks on the side. The maximum height limit in R3 is 75 feet, and that's to allow things like Oakdale Plaza or Johnstown Towers. And so the Planning Commission felt like, given the neighborhood, 35 feet was more appropriate here, so that was the suggested limit. If you look at the area, it's on an arterial street. It's close to Crawford and C5 zoning and businesses, and so this is probably more suitable for some multifamily than other places along 9th Street. It is mostly single family to the north and west, but it is also mostly commercial to the south and to the southeast. So the question for you is really whether you think this zoning change is compatible with the zoning and uses of nearby property. Is it a good buffer use? 9th Street carries over 13,000 vehicles a day. The existing building that's there is not in great condition and is rather close to 9th Street. And in looking at the redesign plan, the applicant has adjusted it so stalls would no longer back directly into 9th Street. Vehicles would be able to head back out. So that's certainly an improvement. So the plan, except for a landscape buffer, due to the narrowness of the lot on the north, it's not possible to get the 15-foot buffer. But other than that, the plan that's submitted complies with all of our zoning limitations. And the one stipulation the Planning Commission thought was important is because Bachhover Plumbing had been there for a very long period of time. They felt that rather than having the business put up the screening, that the screening should be put up by the applicant here to screen between this development and Bachhover Plumbing to the south. So on April 6th, there was a recommendation to approve this as a planned development district, and subject to a number of conditions which are outlined there, which include the 35-foot height limit. And the Planning Commission felt like this was a uniquely suited property for multifamily because of its proximity to the existing commercial uses. And if this was done through a planned development district, it shouldn't harm the nearby properties, and that the features here are consistent with the preferences in our comprehensive plan for where you ought to put multifamily. So if this were approved, it would be kind of a step down from commercial to single family farther to the north. I think with that you have elevations, some floor plans, other drawings in your packet. I'd be happy to address any of those items. There had been some concern expressed about drainage and traffic in the alley, and Public Works Department thinks that there are some things they can do as far as maintenance of that alley to help it drain out to Crawford. Currently it kind of ponds in Mr. Bachhover's back area there and doesn't make it out to Crawford, but we think with some modifications to the alley, this will positively drain to Crawford, and that will make the situation better, not worse. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Questions, Mr. Andrew?
I wanted to touch a little bit on what you said about that drainage. So the city would go ahead and assume that responsibility and fix the back so that there would not be a draining problem?
If you drive by on Crawford, you can see that the alley slopes down to where it reaches Crawford. The problem is there's a built-up or crowned-up area And I think Dustin has it up on the aerial photo there, but almost behind Bachhover's there, right in this area, there's a crown or buildup, and that would be a matter of shaving that off and getting the alley to drain on down that way. It's just material's been added and graded and built up over time, and it's kind of created a barrier. So that would be the city's maintenance responsibility to get that crown out of there and get it to
And it would drain to
positively-
Crawford then?
It would drain down to Crawford.
Okay.
That's the intent. So right now, it doesn't quite make it. It ends up, according to Mr. Bachover, in the area behind his building. So
And right now, everything drains pretty easily in that intersection? I've not been there when we've had a lot of
have
rain.
not been flooding issues with this particular intersection.
Okay, that was my only concern. Thank you.
I have a question about traffic going north on 9th Street. How difficult is that going to be able to turn left at certain times of the day? I'm thinking about school times. I could see that being kind of hard to turn into that on the left side there to the west.
As far as getting in, there is a center turn lane, so that should not be a difficulty. I guess when we were reviewing this, and I don't know if you can go back to or one of the photographs in the front, but the ability to create a parking lot where you can maneuver a car and head out. It will not be easy, particularly at 5 o'clock or certain times of day, to get out, but it will certainly be an improvement over vehicles trying to back into 9th Street as they presently do. So it will not be easy because of the stacking that occurs at that intersection.
And parking in the back was not a solution because of the traffic in the alley?
A lot of the residents were concerned about introducing additional, if you put all the parking in the back, the additional trips up and down the alley. And some of the neighbors would like to see the alley paved, and some of them wouldn't, and there's never been a consensus.
Okay.
Are there additional questions at this point?
Thank you.
Is there any public comment right now on this subject? Okay, see none. I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move we adopt on first reading ordinance number 10-10546.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt on first reading ordinance number 10-10546. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to administration.
Item 8.1, illicit discharge and erosion control. 8.1A, first reading, ordinance number 10-10544, amending Chapter 24 of the Salina Code by adding Article 2 pertaining to illicit discharge. Sub-item 8.1B, first reading, ordinance number 10-10545, amending Chapter 24 of the Salina Code by adding Article 3 pertaining to erosion control.
Mr. Scragg.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. These two ordinances are directly related to follow up from the study session discussion we had recently. And as you may recall, EPA ultimately through KDHE has imposed upon communities Phase 2 regulations related to illicit discharge and erosion control. So it's become not only an EPA mandate, but a condition of our NPDES permit with KDHE. In response to that, we initially drafted an ordinance for the Planning Commission and City Commission's consideration. Ultimately, there was a task force charged with looking at that draft and working on that draft. And in short, I think there was initially concern on the front end. We were kind of on the leading edge of drafting such an ordinance, communities our size in the state of Kansas. And there was concern about the impacts of that ordinance and whether we were comparable to our peer communities. Since that time, there's quite a bit of time that's elapsed, and a number of communities have adopted similar ordinances. We've had the luxury of comparing our draft to those communities, and you've got that comparison attached to the blue sheet. And we've been able to meet with the task force and discuss our approach compared to others. Ultimately, this draft comes to you with a general consensus of the task force. As I mentioned in the study session, we didn't necessarily draft the ordinance by committee. Staff tried to take into account the feedback that we had and prepare the draft on that basis. There were 7 items that are delineated in the blue sheet that were discussion items at the last meeting of the task force. We felt like we addressed those concerns and we can address those going forward. And so we bring to you the final draft for your consideration. I would also add that from the time of the study session till now, the draft ordinances have been placed on the city's website for public review, and an email has been sent to the email list that we have for development services to make the development community aware that this was being considered by you today. So I believe that what we've presented is representative of the consensus that was developed with the task force, and it's also comparable to peer communities that have already adopted the ordinance. So I think we're in keeping with the mandate and in keeping with the norms of our peer communities.
Questions?
Were any comments received since it's been on the website for?
No. We've received none.
I have a couple questions on page 7. On number 9, I'm wondering if we should modify it a little bit so that a homeowner who hires a mobile power washer to come clean their deck or clean out their home wouldn't be cited for violation if the company they hire is not in compliance. Because as it reads, anyone who allows the substances to be released would also be in violation.
Okay. What you have before you today is first reading, so if it's acceptable, we could make that modification between now and second reading.
Well, I'm not. How do you modify that? Because then you're just shifting. I'm not sure how would you see that modified?
I don't know. I would leave that up to Mr. Bankston and
You're
the
kind of
attorneys
shifting
over
it
there.
from one entity to another.
Well, I think the liability should be on the commercial power washing company, not on a homeowner who hires one, not knowing they're in violation of the ordinance.
I'm not sure what they would do. Well,
Commissioners, let us take a look at this. It's somewhat typical in these types of things that you have that kind of that dual responsibility. The owner or person who manages or is in control of that property does have obligation and responsibility. Certainly a change for that one would, to be consistent, would probably change that language under where it says, A, no person shall release or allowed to be released, and it would affect everything on the list. So one thing I would like for us to check and to verify is if, in fact, that language in that form is required for compliance. So we'll check to make sure of that. But even if it isn't, that's probably a pretty big change. But I think we can take a legal peek at it between now and next week. It's not significant, and probably from the scope of the whole thing.
I did have one other question on it, too. I shouldn't have looked so closely. The definition of wastewater means that it must be discharged from a facility in order to be wastewater, which is kind of inconsistent with paragraphs 10 and 11 on page 7. So, if you hire a van to come to your carpet cleaning and they discharge from the van, it's still not wastewater because it's being discharged from a van as opposed to a facility.
Yeah, I see your point, and we'll either need to take a look at including or modifying facility in the definition or using a different reference in 10 and 11, but we can take that into consideration.
Those 3 just jumped out at me.
if there was a section here that caught my eye. When the airport authority tests a fire suppression system for like Hangar 600 or something, where you got this huge amount of foam that's all over the floor, where does that, what is done with that currently?
I think part of it goes through the building drain, but beyond that, I don't know that it just gets washed down the system. I don't know that it goes into the storm sewer system.
Okay.
Martha's whispering over here. It goes down the sanitary sewer, which is the building drain.
Okay.
Thank you. Makes sense.
Further questions? Is there any public comment? Bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move that we adopt on first reading ordinance number 1010544, amending Chapter 24 of the Salina Code by adding Article 2 pertaining to illicit discharge.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance number 10-10544. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Mayor, I also move that we adopt on first reading ordinance number 10-10545, amending Chapter 24 of the Salina Code by adding Article 3 pertaining to erosion control.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance number 10-10545. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Item 8.2, first reading, Charter Ordinance Number 36, exempting from the provisions of KSA 12-4202, 12-4203, 12-4204, and 12-4207 regarding public officials with the authority to sign and serve municipal court complaint or notice to appear, and repealing a portion of Section 23-1 of the Salina Code.
Jared.
Mayor and Commissioners, you have before you Charter Ordinance number 36, which would purport to broaden the statutes that the clerk just quoted. Essentially would allow code enforcement officers, which would include neighborhood services, building officials, and the animal control officers, to sign citations and serve them immediately. Currently, the municipal court is controlled by the state municipal court procedure, which would require either a law enforcement officer to sign and serve that citation immediately, or the prosecutor would file a complaint and send a notice to appear. So anecdotally, what you'd have is an animal control officer who, if they saw a stray dog and the owner was right there picking him up, instead of citing him immediately, they would need to go back and either have the prosecutor do it or call law enforcement in to do it. This would allow them to do it immediately. It would create some efficiency. It would reduce the number of steps and allow them to serve that citation and the notice, which would be essentially what you'd think of as one ticket with the notice to appear at the bottom. This process would then take the prosecutor out of that initial step, and law enforcement as well. The respective provisions of the state statute would be modified using a charter ordinance procedure, and that procedure is, you see in the blue sheet, it would take 2/3 majority vote. There'd be a 60-day waiting period after the second vote, and from that point on, it would be enacted unless there was a petition signed by 10% of the electorate to submit it to referendum. This is a administrative procedure to make the enforcement process more efficient for animal control. And I have more anecdotes if you would like them as well for neighborhood services and other agencies. But that is essentially what the change would do for these agencies. And I can take questions at this time.
Any questions? Thank you. Is there any public comment? Mr. Miller.
I'm referring to the animal shelter. I don't think the other deals have any problems serving papers and all that, but the animal shelter, I don't think they have the knowledge and the skills to understand the laws before they write citation, and I think it's open case to be sued on some certain cases. I think this ought to be put on a board and voted on a later meeting, because I mean they're not trained to be to know the laws like the police officer or the court personnel. So I just think if you're rushing into this thing, you might have some problems later on. So it's something that I would think that you all want to look at very well before you can pass it. I mean, I don't say that they couldn't take some classes and get some training to do it, but I mean, if you're rushing in to do it right away with the animal shelter, I think you're going way out of bounds on that deal. That's my feelings on it.
Comments.
Commissioner, just as an FYI, that they've already had the role for many, many years of actually putting together the paperwork for having the law enforcement officer or prosecutor sign it. So all this would changes their ability to sign it. Everything else would be the same.
I'm sorry, one other point of further clarification. If you read the ordinance, they're only allowed to cite the areas that they actively enforce. So in other words, animal control to only cite the areas that they are knowledgeable about and enforce currently.
Thank you for that.
Jared, correct me if I'm wrong. If in the event that they'd say the prosecutor is still involved in terms of the merits of the citation and whether it goes forward.
Absolutely. It would still go through the prosecutor's office for review, and if charges need to be amended, modified, added, or deleted, the prosecutor would have full discretion to do that.
Thanks.
About how many citations did we write last year?
I don't know, Jared, do you recall? how
Fair
many?
question, but I don't know the answer.
Well, we actually discussed that issue, but I believe it was on the average of 25 a month for animal control, I believe. With cases going through municipal court is probably the way to think about that. Or less, going through municipal court, animal control cases.
Did you say 25 or less?
25 or less, yes. That's just a rough estimate. We'd averaged it out over the course of a year, and that's what we came out with, I believe.
If I may I like to say that I know two people may be qualified to do that down there. They're good people, Rose Bass and Danny Porter. But the other ones, I just don't think they have the training, and they're saying, well, it's been on the books forever, where they're going to carry a manual with them and take 2 or 3 hours, decide if they're going to issue citation. I think it should stay with the municipal court. That's their duty. That's what they get paid for. You shouldn't push it off on the animal shelters. They got other things to do besides issuing citations on the spot.
And appreciate your willingness to comment and have full faith and credit in staff's ability to handle this. Any other questions at this point? Okay, I think it's ready to vote on.
Mayor, I move we adopt Charter Ordinance number 36.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt Charter Ordinance number 36. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.3, approve an engineering services agreement for the Cedar Ridge Drive Improvements, project number 10-2809.
Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. In discussions with Dean today and city managers Jason and Mike, we're going to pull this till next week. We had, I guess in the past, there was a project to the west of here that was special assessed with benefit district funds, so we're going to look at if we need to do that here as well. Right now we have all city funds proposed, so we're not sure that's correct, so we need to postpone for next week.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any positive action that needs taken on that, or can we just?
Should they go ahead and take an action to postpone for next week's meeting, or until next week's meeting?
That would be best, yes.
Okay. Accept the motion to do so.
Mayor, make a motion that we postpone item number 8.3 until next week's meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we, postpone item 8.3 until next week's Monday meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Is there any other business?
Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned.
I got orange.
Thank you.